I have a friend who was, when I was a resident in medicine, medical resident, who said, you know, Dr. Greer, your problem, because we call each other doctor, that's just joking. You know, Dr. Greer, your problem is you think you're a normal person screwing up, when in reality, you're a screwed up person doing very well. And I thought, no truer words were ever spoken. And so, you know, here I am, this kid, and so these divine beings, there were two of them. Both were like universal avatar essences of consciousness. And I said, well, you want me to come with you, or should I go back to Earth? And they said, well, we want you to go back. And I went, oh. And I said, I had enough presence of mind to say, thy will be done, sort of thing. So I said, okay. So with that, I sort of came back, and I awakened in my body. Now, at that point, I had your classic paralysis where I couldn't move. I said, oh, great. Now I'm back in this shell of a body. I've just left this beautiful divine realm of consciousness and light, and I'm stuck as a paralyzed 17-year-old. But I couldn't move my body. I couldn't move a hand. I couldn't move anything. But my eyes were open. But I could hear. I could see. My senses were there, but I couldn't move. I went, oh boy, am I in trouble now? I'm living by myself in this little studio apartment, $75 a month, including utilities. It was a dump. Anyway. So here we are. So I'm in this state, and then all of a sudden something comes beside me, and it's a test, and it's a being that I could sense came beside me, and was sort of pulling me out of my body, and I had to see if I had enough will to stay, to had the will to live. That part was a little freaky. I have to say it was a little bit, because basically what that being was there for is say, do you have the will to stay here and do what you're supposed to do here? So I was there in that state, and it went back and forth, out of my body, in my body, 4 or 5 times. I don't know how many times. And finally, I said, yes, I'm going to stay here, because that's what I was told Spirit wanted me to do. So I stayed. And then I began to be able to move and walk and got up, and all this, the infection I had, and I still have a hole in my leg right here, sort of a big indented area where I lost a lot of this thigh muscle, but I was healed. I never saw a doctor. And the reason I had not gone to see one is that I had no insurance and I was poor, and so I just didn't go see one. You know, at $1.60 an hour, it's tough to go see a doctor, which is what the minimum wage was back then. So I thought to myself, well, you know, what do I do now? So I sort of filed that away. That was in March of '73. A couple months later, I learned of a program for meditation where you could begin to experience cosmic consciousness in a meditative state. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. So I took my mother. I said, why don't we go to this? So I took my mother, and she couldn't afford it either, but I got a student rate, so I took the course and started studying all these sort of concepts of higher states of consciousness, the Vedas. You know, the Vedas, the ancient writings from India, predate Hinduism, by the way. I began to study from every culture in the world, native cultures, ancient Christian, you name it, the concepts of spirit and consciousness. And so I learned some meditation techniques and went on this path of exploring consciousness as a 17-year-old. In fact, well, let me correct that. It was on my 18th birthday that I learned this to do mantra Vedic meditation. And it was kind of a funny story, because later I became a meditation teacher before I was a medical doctor. In my misspent youth, when everyone else was running around drunk and chasing skirts, I was in an ashram meditating 8 hours a day. So I went to this an instruction course, and it was one-on-one. And I sat down to meditate, and I was there with the mantra. And I went very deep and very quiet, and then I transcended into the unbounded mind, just pure mind. It's pure consciousness, not defined by space, time, thoughts, or ego. It's just pure consciousness. Beautiful. And after this, about 20 minutes, the meditation ended, and my instructor looked at me and said, "You transcended into cosmic consciousness, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, isn't that what we were supposed to do?" I didn't understand that you were supposed to make a big geschrei about this, and make a big deal and, be on a bed of nails or something for 40 years. So I'm very irreverent, you'll find. Anyway, but I'm going, all that stuff. So I said, well, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. You just connect to the mind whereby you're conscious and transcend. So he says, yeah, but most people, I said, well, that was great. So I began to practice that. 4 months later, in October '73, I'm up on a mountain in North Carolina. And so I've carried this near-death experience with me into my first year of college. And so I'm absorbed totally in wanting to be in the mountains of North Carolina, where it's peaceful and pure energy, away from humans as much as possible, and just be in consciousness and the purity of Gaia, the purity of the Earth Spirit. And my grandmother was Cherokee Indian, so I have this deep connection to Earth. And I was up on this mountain called Rich's Mountain outside a little town called Boone, North Carolina, named after Daniel Boone. And I was up on this mountain way at about 5,200 feet, I think it is, at the base of what they call a fire tower. Now, you would say fire tower, but they say a fire tower. So I went, this is North Carolina, so I'm up at the fire tower, and so at the base of the fire tower was a place to sit on some rocks. And so I got there just before sunset, and I saw this beautiful, the sun was just going down, and there was this beautiful disc, an ET craft that materialized. Boop. And it was exactly the one I saw when I was 8 or 9, and they were back. So I just sort of acknowledged them, oh, you're back, how beautiful. So I just sat and meditated. So I went into this deep meditation. And at the conclusion of the meditation, which I thought was 20, 30 minutes, it turned out it was much longer, deeper. I just went into this transcendental state of pure, quiet mind. At the end of it, I opened my eyes, and as I did, I stood up and looked, and you could see the whole Milky Way galaxy from horizon to horizon up at that altitude, crystal clear. Quite chilly up at that altitude that time of year. And I had a ski jacket on, and a beautiful thought of, actually it was a thought sent into me from beyond that said, behold what a beautiful universe God has made. Bang. At that instant, those words, I went right back to the near death. Beautiful. But I wasn't dead. I was in my body. So I'm walking around, and it's beautiful. So I think, wow, I'm having this near-death experience, but I still have this. So I thought, wow, this is how life ought to be. On a moment, this little guy, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, comes over and is about this tall, touches me on my right shoulder. So I'm wearing a ski jacket. It's kind of puffy, you know how they are. And I see the jacket indent like this. And my shoulder's touched. And when I'm touched, there's an electromagnetic static discharge that builds around me. And all of my hair stood on end. And I had hair then. I mean, I had kind of long hair. And it was, unlike now, but it went whoop. And my arm hair was all standing on end. And with that, I dematerialized onto that ship for, I'm saying 3 to 4 hours, because I wasn't returned to the top of the mountain until midnight or so. And I was in this state of consciousness on this spacecraft with multiple civilizations co-creating what we now call the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols, the techniques for making contact using consciousness. Now, it was a very strange experience because people say, what did you talk about? It wasn't like, hey, come over, we're going to have some bagels and lox and, and chat about who ran for president and other bullshit, frankly. It was very much being in that state of consciousness with them, in a sort of where information was conveyed in nonverbal packets of knowing. Does that make sense? Knowing, pre-verbal, not monkey chatter. Not this, not what we're doing right now, but the essence of knowledge that's pre-verbal. That's deep communication. So as this was going forward, I began to realize that the only reason they were interested in me was that I'd had that experience and embraced it and understood that consciousness, this unbounded, pure field of awareness that's within every single person, moreover, within every single thing, is the key, the Rosetta Stone to interstellar contact and communication. It is the science of the next millennium. So that's what we want to talk about today. So that's kind of my introduction. And I know it's a little bit of a personal story, but I want to make this real. It's very real for me why I'm still doing this. A lot of people say, what causes a medical doctor to leave his medical career to do something like this? That is enough to make you leave your medical career. Because in 1990, I was revisited by these civilizations when I was working as a doctor, and they said, pick up that which you have dropped. Those are the exact words that were spoken to me in my bedroom in North Carolina next to the Biltmore Castle, Biltmore House, where I used to live in Biltmore Forest. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, now it's time. I was wondering what would happen between 1973 and 1990. So all that I was living with doing this, I was keeping it to myself and a few close friends. And then I was kind of told, now it's time to share this information and connect some dots for people on this issue. And so in 1990, I started the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and CSETI, and I began to just speak of the concepts of using consciousness and non-locality of mind and coherent thought to make contact with these civilizations within the construct, ethical construct, of universal peace. That's what we really want to talk about, because there are retrograde interests that are trying to drag us into endless war. And it is already time that we establish on this planet and on others universal peace.
On your screen. With us now from Washington is Stephen Bassett, founder and executive director of the Extraterrestrial Phenomena Political Action Committee. Last time he was here, he was running for Congress, was unsuccessful in that venture. But I will ask you today, sir, the Mexican government, the Mexican military says, hey, we took these pictures, these are UFOs. What was that, do you know?
This is significant for two reasons, Shepard. One, this is released by the Defense Ministry of Mexico. This is a message being sent to the United States government that Mexico and many other governments are losing patience with our government's intransigence in ending this embargo. Other messages have been sent by France in 1999 with the Cometa report, and by the United Kingdom when they released a substantial number of documents regarding the Bentwaters case in 2000. Many countries know about the extraterrestrial presence, but they deferred to the United States with regard to the timing of when disclosure would take place, but they're simply losing patience.
How do we know this, by the way?
Well, we know it by paying attention. I've been following this now for 10 years. We call it the politics of disclosure, the disclosure process. Hundreds of government witnesses in this country have come forward, and other governments are putting pressure on our government. The media hasn't covered it thoroughly enough, Shepard. If it did, it would learn about some of the things I'm mentioning here, and also learn about thousands of other videos and photographs that have been taken over Mexico by Mexican citizens since 1991.
There's absolutely no question about that, and his number, thousands, is accurate since 1991. Thousands of pictures and videotapes of discs, but never anything like this, taken by such sophisticated cameras on board military vehicles.
Oh, there's been plenty of...
But not as clear and widespread as this, and government confirmed in this way. I'm just saying that these are unusual in that
Oh, no,
way.
it's happened many times before, but this is the first time it's been released. Believe me, there is evidence like this in the archives of every major first world government in the country, but they release this publicly in a news conference in Mexico City. That's the difference.
Studies have been done that, quote, clearly indicate the likelihood of an extraterrestrial explanation. But there are people sitting out there, I'm hoping there are millions of people watching at the moment, who are saying, this is nutty. Why, you know, why do we even talk about such things?
The polls show otherwise, Shepard. CNN, Time, Reuters polls, last 10 years, confirmed, convinced that the extraterrestrial presence explains this phenomena. Disclosure is at hand. It is very close, and the American people need to prepare themselves very soon for an announcement from our government that there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence engaging this planet and the human race.
All right. Well, there you have it. Very interesting. Thank you. We'll try to find out more about the lights, and the next time there's a congressman around, I'll ask him. Probably not on the camera, but I'll ask him off the camera. So there's something to feed on.
A las 7, a la misma altura.
Hay unas nubes, ahí se debe de ver esto.
Pero, a ver, busquen eso que viene atrás de nosotros.
¿Ve cómo se ve? Se ve como en dos faros.
Viene como a las 7, 8 de la posición. Lo raro es que trae una punta adelante.
¿Hay algo?
Un puntito adelante.
A ver, ¿qué tenemos?
Nada, señor. A ver, permítame, déjale busco.
¿Y nosotros?
Comandante, ¿qué es eso?
¿Qué distancia más o menos lo tenías, Telles?
Oye, a ver, abusados, es como...
Ahí van más. Van más, siguen más atrás. Son 10, 11 objetos.
Son muchos objetos.
Afirmativo. Ahí van. Va, uno. Y ahí van los atrás. Siguientes.
¿Qué es eso? Dios mío.
¿Se anda correteando?
¿Qué es eso? A ver, trata de enfocar.
Máximo.
Ok, no dejes que los dejes atrás. Ok.
Van.
Sigue ese, no lo dejes,
No,
Telles.
van todos, van aproximadamente como 10.
como
¿Ya lo vio?
4.
¿Ya lo vio? Y van pasando.
Tú manejas, no lo pierdes.
Sí. Ahí van.
Ahí van. 3, 4, 5, 6. Son 6.
¿Abajo o arriba o arriba?
En medio, ahí van.
Ahí van a ir 1, 2, 3,
la misma
4,
altura.
5.
Qué barbaridad, ¿eh?
Ahí se van a ver bien. Y van a una velocidad, pero... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
Síguelo, no lo cierras. Siguiendo.
The Mexican Air Force has released a video that some of you are going to find difficult to believe. A journalist says it shows images of UFOs tracking a Mexican military plane. He says Mexico's defense secretary gave him the video, which was allegedly taken by the pilot during a patrol. The pilot says up to 16 lights were tracking his aircraft. The Mexican defense secretary says images like these have never been released to the public by the armed forces of any country.
And they're saying scientists can look at them and try to figure out what they think, if they're really, really UFO.